The warm rays of the fall sun shone through the blinds, painting streaks of light on the dark living room floor of the Grayson house. The house was located in one of Knoxville's upscale neighborhoods, where quiet streets were lined with manicured yards and solid two-story buildings. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the faint smell of sandalwood, Alex Grayson's favorite incense, wafted through the air. Alex stood at the window, pensively watching the play of light and shadow. Her tall figure, dressed in a simple but elegant ivory dress, seemed fragile and strong at the same time. 36 years of life had taught her to wear her vulnerability with dignity. Her dark skin glowed softly in the morning light, and her short hair was styled in an understated but fashionable style. Heavy footsteps were heard behind Alex's back. James Grayson was coming down the stairs, holding a weighty suitcase in his hand. The 42-year-old man looked tired even at the beginning of the day. The wrinkles on his forehead had grown deeper in recent months, and there was anxiety in his eyes, which he carefully hid behind a mask of businesslike calm. "Leaving again?" Alex asked without turning around. James set his suitcase at the foot of the stairs and walked over to the kitchen island where breakfast was served. "You know how important this contract is. I have to be there in person." His voice sounded detached, as if part of his mind was already far from home. "As always," Alex said quietly, finally turning to her husband. "Emily is going to be disappointed again. You promised to come to her college performance." James's face softened at the mention of his daughter, but only for a moment. He sipped his coffee and grumbled, "Too hot. Tell her my apologies. I'll try to be back in a week, maybe even sooner." Alex shook her head faintly. She'd heard those promises 100 times before. From the moment she'd walked into this family 4 years ago, becoming James's wife and his daughter's stepmother, the pattern hadn't changed much. James was always somewhere out there, outside their home, immersed in business, meetings, contracts. Emily came into the kitchen, a dark-skinned girl of 18 with a mop of curly hair gathered into a careless bun. Her eyes, as dark and expressive as her father's, instantly assessed the situation. "Don't even try to explain," she tossed to her father, noticing the suitcase. "I'm already used to it." James sighed and took a step toward his daughter, but she had already turned away, opening the refrigerator and pretending to be engrossed in finding food. "Emily, you know I'm doing all this for us, for our family," he began the familiar speech. "For the family?" Emily slammed the refrigerator door shut sharply. "What family, Daddy? The one you see once a month?" Alex watched their altercation in silence, knowing that interfering would only make things worse. Emily and James, despite their outward similarities, were like they were from different planets. The daughter emotional and outspoken, the father reserved and immersed in his work. "I don't have time for this right now," James glanced at his watch. "The cab will be here in 10 minutes. Emily snorted and grabbed an apple off the table and headed back towards the stairs. "Of course, you never have time." James escorted her out with a glance and sighed heavily. When his daughter's footsteps subsided on the second floor, he turned to Alex. "Please look after her. She's gotten so unpredictable lately." Alex stepped closer and placed a hand on her husband's shoulder. "She just wants your attention, James. She needs a father, not a provider of material goods." He pulled away as if her touch hurt. "You don't understand. My business is all we have. Without it, we can't live the way we do now. Maybe we don't need to have all of this." Alex circled the spacious living room with expensive furniture and designer decor. James shook his head, signaling that the conversation was over. He finished his coffee and headed into the hallway where his suitcase stood. A heavy silence hung in the house after he left. Alex stood in the middle of the kitchen, feeling a familiar sense of emptiness. Her marriage to James was more like a business arrangement than a union of two people in love. Once, she had thought she could melt the ice in his heart, help him get closer to his daughter, create a real family. But as the years passed, the distance only grew. Alex's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps. Emily was coming back down to the kitchen. Her hair was now loose, framing her beautiful young face. In her hands, she held a folder of drawings. "Has he left already?" the girl asked, though the answer was obvious. Alex nodded and pointed to the chair next to her. "You want breakfast?" Emily shook her head and placed the folder on the table. Not hungry, but I wanted to show you something. Alex took a seat next to her and Emily opened the folder, revealing a series of sketches, portraits of people with expressive, almost painfully expressive faces. This is amazing, Alex admired sincerely, gently going through the drawings. You have a real talent for conveying emotion through lines. Emily's face brightened. These rare moments of approval were like a breath of fresh air to her. Really? I was thinking of adding them to my exhibit at my college show. Absolutely. They'll be the center of attention. Alex stopped at one of the drawings, a woman with deep, sad eyes looking directly at the viewer. Alex recognized herself in this portrait, though her facial features were slightly altered. Emily noticed her gaze and blushed slightly. It's beautiful, Alex said quietly, feeling something warm spill into her chest. You see more than most people. Their gazes met, and for a moment there was an understanding between them, a deep and intimate understanding that neither of her and James had. Two souls who felt like strangers in their own home found in each other a reflection of their hidden fears and hopes. Alex was the first to look away, suddenly realizing the misplaced intensity of the moment. You know what? Let's do something together today. Just you and me, she suggested, returning to safer territory. Like what? We could visit that new exhibit at the City Museum. They say there's an amazing collection of modern art there. Emily's eyes lit up. Really? I've been thinking about it, but I didn't want to go alone. Then it's settled. Alex smiled, feeling the tension of the last few minutes recede. In the following days, while James was away, Alex and Emily spent more and more time together. They visited exhibitions, discussed art and literature, shared their thoughts and dreams. Emily, usually reserved with her peers, blossomed in the presence of her stepmother. And Alex, who fought all her life for the right to be herself, found in her stepdaughter a surprisingly mature and understanding soul. One evening they were sitting in the living room, sorting through the art books they had bought the day before. Emily settled on the floor, resting her back against the couch where Alex was sitting. They flipped through the pages, commenting on the artist's work and sharing their impressions. Do you think I could ever create something like this? Emily asked, pointing to a reproduction of a painting by a famous artist. Alex leaned closer, her hand involuntarily touching her stepdaughter's shoulder. You're already creating amazing things. But it's not about comparing yourself to others, it's about finding your own voice. Emily turned her head, their faces unexpectedly close. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Alex felt her heart beating faster and her throat drying up. Something new, unfamiliar, and dangerous was brewing between them. You're the only one who really understands me, Emily whispered. Alex pulled away carefully, trying to hide the confusion. It's getting late. Can we continue this tomorrow? Emily nodded, but disappointment flashed in her eyes. She gathered her books and headed for the stairs. Good night, Alex. Good night. Left alone, Alex covered her face with her hands. What's going on? These feelings. They were wrong, forbidden. Emily was her husband's daughter, almost 20 years younger. And yet, for the first time in a long time, Alex felt truly alive. The ringing of the phone snapped her out of her musings. James's name popped up on the screen. Hi, her voice sounded unnatural. How are you there? James asked. His tone was businesslike, as if he was checking on the status of a branch of the company. Everything's fine. Emily's getting ready for her college exhibition. Good. Listen, I'm going to have to stay a few more days. An unforeseen circumstance came up. Alex felt oddly relieved. I understand. Don't worry, we'll manage. I knew I could count on you. There was warmth in his voice, but it seemed distant and foreign. After a brief conversation, Alex went upstairs. As she passed Emily's room, she noticed a streak of light under the door. After hesitating for a second, she knocked softly. Yes? Alex opened the door ajar. Emily was sitting on the bed, covered in sketches and pencils. James called. He's staying a few more days. Emily shrugged, pretending not to care. The usual. Anything else? Alex paused, feeling an invisible thread being pulled between them. No, just wanted to say goodnight again. Emily smiled, and there was something new and defiant in that smile. Good night, Alex. Closing the door, Alex leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. She realized that she was standing on the edge of a precipice. One wrong step, and everything would come crashing down. But for the first time in years, she felt real, and it was frightening and alluring at the same time. The morning was overcast. Gray clouds hovered over Knoxville, promising rain by noon. Alex woke up earlier than usual and lay staring at the ceiling for a long time. The events of the last few days kept her awake. The feelings she was beginning to feel for Emily frightened her, and at the same time filled her life with new colors. She tried to convince herself that it was just mental intimacy, nothing more, a result of the loneliness, the emptiness in her relationship with James. But deep inside, she knew she was lying to herself. The sound of the front door opening snapped her out of her musings. Muffled voices came from the first floor. Emily was talking to someone. Alex hadn't intended to eavesdrop, but when the male voice grew louder, she froze, straining to hear. "I don't understand why you're avoiding me." The voice was young, agitated, and clearly angry. "Kyle, I told you, we need to take a break. I'm not ready for a relationship right now." Emily spoke softly but firmly. "A break? A week ago everything was fine and now you need a break? What's changed?" Alex walked cautiously out of the bedroom and stopped at the stairs, hesitant to go down but wanting to be close by in case the situation escalated. "I just have a lot going on right now. College exhibition, studying. Emily, don't lie to me." There was a pause, after which Emily said more sharply, "I don't have to answer to you, Kyle. We've only been dating for 2 months. That doesn't give you the right to control my life." "Is this about someone else? Have you met someone?" Alex felt her heart skip a beat. "No, it's not about that. It's just, I need space. Time to think. Do you take me for an idiot? I can see how you've changed. You've been ignoring my messages for a week now, and then today I saw you in town. You were so happy. Who is he?" "Kyle, go away, now. I'm not leaving until you tell me the truth." Alex decided to intervene. She walked down the stairs, pretending she had just woken up. "Emily, is everything okay?" Emily and a tall young man with short curly hair stood in the hallway. His face was contorted with anger, but he was slightly confused at the sight of Alex. "Good morning, Alex." Emily looked grateful for her appearance. "Kyle was just leaving." Kyle shifted his gaze from one woman to the other. His eyes narrowed, as if he was trying to solve some mystery. "Sorry to bother you," he finally said, but there wasn't a hint of apology in his voice. "We'll talk again, Emily." When the door closed behind him, Emily exhaled in relief. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Is everything okay?" Alex stepped closer, but didn't dare touch the girl. "Yeah, it's just that Kyle doesn't understand the word no." "Has he been acting like this for long?" Emily shrugged. "For the last week for sure, ever since I told him I wanted to take a break." "Maybe we should tell my dad. If Kyle's getting obsessive—" "No!" Emily shook her head sharply. "Dad doesn't need to know about this. He's already forever thinking I can't handle my own problems." Alex nodded, understanding her feelings. "Okay, but if things get worse, we have to do something about it." Emily looked her straight in the eyes, and in her gaze she read something more than just gratitude. "Thank you for taking care of me. It means a lot." At that moment, that special tension between them was back again, a mixture of attraction and forbiddenness that took their breath away. Alex was the first to break the silence. "How about breakfast? I can make your favorite blueberry pancakes." The day passed almost as usual, but something subtly changed. Every casual glance, every passing touch took on new meaning. In the evening, they sat in the living room with cups of hot tea, watching a movie they'd both wanted to see for a long time. Emily sat very close to Alex, their shoulders touching. At some point, the girl put her head on her stepmother's shoulder, and Alex felt her heart beat faster. "Alex?" Emily called softly, not taking her eyes off the screen. "Yes? Have you ever felt something wrong? Something you can't feel, but you feel it anyway?" Alex swallowed, her hand involuntarily touching Emily's hair. "Yes," she answered honestly. "Felt it." Emily lifted her head and looked at her. Her eyes read determination mixed with fear. "And what did you do?" Tried to fight, sometimes successfully, but… Alex stammered, realizing she was treading into dangerous territory. But… Emily scooted even closer. Some feelings are stronger than we are, Alex whispered, knowing she was crossing the line but unable to stop herself. Their faces were right next to each other. Time seemed to stand still. And then Emily's lips touched Alex's, gently, tentatively, questioningly, just for a moment, but it was enough to make the world turn upside down. Alex pulled away first, her eyes wide with shock and realization of what had happened. "Emily, we can't," her voice shook. "This isn't right." "Why? Because you're married to my father? Or because we're both women?" "Both, and a lot more." Emily pulled back, wrapping her arms around her knees. "I know, but I've never felt like this before. It's different with you." Alex closed her eyes. She should have been judicious, responsible, but instead all she felt was the desire to feel those lips on hers again. "We need to think about this. It's too complicated," she finally said. Emily nodded, but there was no regret in her eyes, only determination and something else, the realization that their lives would never be the same again. In the days that followed, they tried to return to their normal routine, but there was an invisible bond between them that was impossible to ignore. Every glance was filled with hidden meaning. Every casual touch was an electric shock. Emily didn't answer Kyle's calls anymore, completely focused on her feelings for Alex. And Alex struggled with herself, with her emotions, with the desire that was growing stronger and stronger. The denouement came unexpectedly. On a rainy evening, when the storm was raging outside the windows, cutting off electricity in the whole neighborhood, they were sitting in the living room by candlelight. Shadows danced on the walls, creating an intimate, almost magical atmosphere. "I'm scared," Emily admitted, looking at the candle flame. "What are you afraid of?" Alex asked, even though she already knew the answer. "Of what I feel, of what might happen, of what will never happen." Alex reached out and touched her cheek. The gesture was full of tenderness and concern. "I'm scared too, but sometimes fear is part of the journey." Emily turned her head and kissed Alex's palm. That simple gesture was full of such passion and devotion that Alex's breath caught. The next moment they were kissing, not tentatively and questioningly, like the first time, but desperately and greedily, as if trying to make up for lost time. Emily's hands tangled in Alex's hair, pulling her closer. Alex wrapped her arms around the girl's waist, feeling the heat of her body through the thin fabric of her t-shirt. When they finally pulled away from each other, both were breathing heavily, their eyes glistening in the flickering candlelight. "We shouldn't," Alex whispered, but her body said otherwise. "I know," Emily replied, kissing her stepmother's neck. "But I want this. Want you." That night they made love for the first time in the darkness of Alex's bedroom. To the accompaniment of rain and thunder, they explored each other's bodies with greed and tenderness at the same time. Every touch, every kiss was both a sin and a blessing at the same time. The forbidden fruit was sweet to the point of dizziness. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, they did not talk about what had happened. Words seemed superfluous. They simply enjoyed the closeness, the silence, and the warmth. But reality couldn't be ignored forever. The next morning, at breakfast, Emily was the first to break the silence. "What happens now?" Alex sipped her coffee, trying to gather her thoughts. "I don't know. What's between us? It can't last." "Why?" There was a challenge in Emily's voice. "You know why? Your father. My father doesn't make you happy. He doesn't even notice that you exist." Alex couldn't argue with that. Her marriage to James had long ago become a formality. But still, it's not just him. You're his daughter. You're 18 years younger than me. Whatever is between us, society will never accept it. Emily took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "I don't care what society thinks. I feel what I feel, and I know you feel the same way." Alex looked down at their intertwined hands. There was so much trust, so much sincerity in that simple gesture. How long had it been since she had felt truly loved and wanted? "I'm afraid we'll both regret it," she said quietly. "And I'm afraid of missing the only chance to be truly happy," Emily replied, and there was a wisdom in her voice that was surprising for her age. In the days that followed, they lived like a dream. Stolen kisses in the hallways, secret touches under the table, passionate nights in each other's arms. Every moment was imbued with both the fear of detection and the rapture of forbidden love. One night, as they lay naked in Alex's bed, Emily confessed, "I never thought I would love a woman, much less a woman who is married to my father." Alex ran her hand down her back, enjoying the silkiness of the skin beneath her fingers. "And I never thought I'd love my husband's daughter. Life is full of surprises. Do you really love me?" Emily propped herself up on an elbow, peering into Alex's eyes. "Yes," she replied, realizing she was telling the truth. "I do love you, and it scares the hell out of me." Meanwhile, Kyle hadn't given up trying to contact Emily. He'd called, texted, even carpooled outside the college to see her. His obsession was starting to scare both women. "Maybe we should go to the police," Alex suggested after another incident when Kyle followed Emily home and made a scene in the driveway. "And what am I going to tell them? That my ex can't get over the breakup? They'll think it's just teenage drama." "It's more than teenage dramas, it's out of bounds." Emily shook her head. "I'll figure it out on my own. He'll get tired eventually." But Kyle wasn't getting tired. His messages grew more and more aggressive and threatening. "I know you have someone," he wrote. "I'll find out who he is, and he'll regret it." Alex and Emily tried not to pay much attention to it, but the anxiety was building. They began to be more cautious, always checking to see if anyone was around when they showed affection for each other, pulling back the curtains in the bedroom, talking more quietly. "Do you think he's guessing?" Emily asked once, referring to Kyle. "I don't. But what can he do? Even if he guesses, he has no proof." But the fear of being discovered only increased the intensity of their feelings. Every encounter could be their last, and they lived in the moment, savoring every second together. "You know, sometimes I imagine we could leave here," Emily said as they lay in bed, looking at the stars through the window. "Start fresh somewhere where no one knows us." Alex smiled, stroking her hair. "And where would we go?" "Maybe to California, or to New York, somewhere where people are less conservative." "What about your studies?" "I could transfer, or start over." Alex knew they were just dreams, but they were beautiful. A world where they could be together openly, without hiding or fear of judgment. "Maybe one day," she whispered, kissing Emily's forehead. But fate had decreed otherwise. On Thursday, when they least expected it, there was the sound of the front door opening. Alex and Emily were sitting on the living room couch, looking at pictures from a recent college exhibition. They weren't holding hands or kissing, but their postures, the way they sat close together, their relaxed and intimate atmosphere all spoke of more than just friendship between stepmother and stepdaughter. "I'm home!" James's voice echoed down the hall. The women froze, exchanging panicked glances. James wasn't due back until 3 days later. "You're early." Alex rose to meet him, trying to sound normal, but her voice shook. James smiled and hugged his wife. He smelled like expensive cologne and a long drive. "I decided to surprise you. The meetings ended earlier than planned." Emily stood up as well, her face tense and fear red in her eyes. "Hi, Daddy," she said, and Alex noticed James frown slightly, catching something odd in his daughter's tone. "Hi, honey. How are you doing? How's the exhibition?" "It's fine. Emily got top marks for her artwork," Alex replied, trying to steer the conversation in a safe direction. James nodded, but his gaze shifted from his wife to his daughter and back again, as if he was trying to solve some kind of riddle. "Well done. I'm proud of you, Emily." "Thank you," the woman replied briefly. An awkward silence hung in the air. James was the first to break it. "I'm tired from the road. I think I'll take a shower and get some rest." He went upstairs and Alex and Emily remained standing in the living room, hesitant to even look at each other. Their hearts were racing with fear and adrenaline. James had returned. Their seclusion was over. Now they had to hide their feelings under the mask of a normal family relationship. When James's footsteps died down on the second floor, Emily approached Alex and whispered, "What now?" Alex shook her head, anxiety red in her eyes. Now, We have to be extra careful." The morning was cold and overcast. Gray clouds covered the sky over Knoxville, and the light rain drummed on the roofs of the houses, creating a monotonous noise that could put even the most restless person to sleep. The Grayson house was silent, broken only by the ticking of the antique clock in the living room. Emily awoke to the sound of breaking glass. She opened her eyes and lay there for a few seconds, listening to the silence, trying to figure out if she was dreaming or not. The room was in semi-darkness. The curtains kept out the dim light of the overcast morning. The clock on the bedside table read 7:30. It had been 2 days since James had returned, 2 days of unbearable tension, secret glances, and fear of being exposed. Alex and Emily had barely spoken in private, avoided any physical contact, pretended that nothing had changed between them. But Emily noticed the way James sometimes looked at them, scrutinizing, studying them, as if he suspected something was wrong. The sound that had woken her didn't repeat itself. Emily thought she was imagining it, but suddenly she heard muffled voices from the first floor. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was tense, even aggressive. Someone was arguing. Putting on her robe, Emily walked out of her room and stopped at the top of the stairs. The voices subsided. There was silence in the house again, too deep, almost ominous. "Daddy?" she called out, but there was no answer. Anxiety was building. Emily went down the stairs, trying not to make any noise. There was no one in the living room or kitchen. She noticed the broken vase on the floor. The shards glittered dimly in the gray morning light. Perhaps it was that sound that had woken her up. "Alex?" Emily called out, heading toward her parents' bedroom. The door was ajar. Emily slowed her step, a sudden sense of dread restraining her movements. Something was wrong. She could feel it with every cell in her body. "Alex? Are you here?" Silence in response. Emily took a deep breath and pushed open the door. What she saw changed her life forever. Alex was lying on the floor beside the bed, her body unnaturally twisted and a pool of dark blood spreading around her head. A heavy metal lamp, once a beautiful piece of furniture, now turned into an instrument of death, lay nearby. Its base was covered in blood and strands of hair. The room looked like it had been the scene of a fierce struggle. A dressing table mirror shattered, a chair overturned, framed photographs thrown off the table, traces of blood on the light-colored carpet. A scream caught in Emily's throat. She rushed to the motionless body, dropped to her knees beside Alex, and with trembling hands tried to feel for a pulse on her neck. Nothing. The skin was already cold. "No, no, no," Emily whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Alex, please wake up." But Alex couldn't wake up. Her eyes, always so alive and attentive, now stared into the void, forever frozen in an expression of surprise and fear. Emily didn't remember pulling out her cell phone and dialing 911. Her voice sounded strange, like it belonged to someone else. "Please help. My stepmother. She's dead. Someone killed her." The operator was saying something, asking questions, giving instructions, but the words reached Emily's mind as if through a column of water. One thought was bouncing around in her head. Alex is dead. Alex was murdered. Followed by a terrifying, intolerable, "Where's Daddy?" Emily ran out of the bedroom, still clutching the phone in her hand. "Daddy!" she screamed, looking around the house. "Daddy, where are you?" She searched the entire first floor, then went upstairs, checking her room, the study, the guest bedrooms. James was nowhere to be found. His car wasn't in the driveway either. The police arrived 12 minutes after the call, 12 minutes that seemed like an eternity to Emily. During that time, she sat in the hallway, leaning against the wall, unable to return to the bedroom to Alex's body, but also unable to get far. Shock had been replaced by numbness. She wasn't crying, just staring at one point, trying to comprehend what had happened. The sound of sirens brought her out of her stupor. The flashing red and blue lights of police cars reflected in the windows of the house. Emily stood up and, like a somnambulist, went to open the door. 2 patrolmen were the first to enter. A young, light-skinned officer with a tense face and his partner, a middle-aged black woman with a determined look. "Miss Grayson?" the female officer asked. "I'm Officer Johnson," Where's the victim located? Emily pointed toward her parents' bedroom. In there. She's in there. The officers walked quickly in the direction indicated, and Emily was left standing in the hallway, feeling strangely detached from what was happening, as if it was all happening to someone other than her. Detectives, paramedics, and forensics arrived after the patrolman. The Grayson house became a crime scene in no time. People in uniforms and hazmat suits scurried back and forth, taking pictures, taking samples, writing things down. Emily was moved to the living room and asked to wait there. Miss Grayson, a tall, dark-skinned woman in her mid-40s, with short-cropped hair and penetrating eyes, entered the room. I'm Detective Martha Raines. I'm very sorry about what happened. She sat down across from Emily, her movements calm and measured in contrast to the fidgety activity of the other officers. Can you tell me what happened? Emily swallowed, gathering her thoughts. I don't know. I woke up to some kind of sound. Then I heard voices. I went downstairs and found her. Tears came to her eyes again, and Emily struggled to hold back a sob. Who else was in the house this morning? Detective Raines asked softly. My father, James Grayson, but I can't find him. His car is gone. Have you tried contacting him? Emily shook her head. I didn't think about it. It's all kind of a blur. Detective Raines nodded understandingly. It's a normal reaction to shock. We'll get in touch with your father. In the meantime, tell me about your stepmother. How long has she been married to your father? 4 years, Emily replied, trying to focus on the questions. They met at a charity event. What was their relationship like? Emily hesitated. What could she say? That her father practically ignored his wife? That Alex was miserable in that marriage? That she, Emily, had fallen in love with her father's wife, and their connection might have been the reason for what had happened? Normal, I guess, she finally uttered. Dad works a lot, is away a lot. Alex was understanding. Detective Raines looked at her carefully, as if trying to read something between the lines. And your relationship with your stepmother? Emily felt the blood rush to her cheeks. Good. We got along. No conflicts? Disputes? No. Emily shook her head. Alex was good to me. We spent a lot of time together, especially when Dad wasn't home. At that moment, one of the officers peeked into the room. Detective Raines, we found something. The detective apologized and walked out. Emily was left alone, wrapping her arms around herself, as if trying to protect herself from an unseen threat. Her thoughts were jumbled. Alex was dead. She was murdered. Daddy's not home. What happened this morning? Who could have done this? And worst of all, could her and Alex's secret be the cause of it all? A few minutes later, Detective Raines returned. Her face was serious. Miss Grayson, we need to contact your father as soon as possible. Do you have his contact information? Emily nodded and gave James's phone number. The detective wrote it down and handed it to one of the officers. We'll also need information about your stepmother's friends and acquaintances, her daily routine, habits, anything that can help us understand what happened. Emily nodded again, feeling panic rising inside. She couldn't tell the whole truth. Couldn't give away her and Alex's secret. But could she fool a seasoned detective? An hour later, James burst into the house. His face was white as a sheet, eyes widened with shock. Where is she? What happened? He searched Emily's eyes among the police officers. Detective Raines approached him. Mr. Grayson, I'm Detective Martha Raines. I'm very sorry to inform you, but your wife is dead. We have reason to believe it's a homicide. James froze, his lips moving but making no sound. Then his knees buckled, and if it hadn't been for the quick reaction of one of the officers, he would have fallen. No, that's impossible. I talked to her last night. His gaze found Emily sitting in the corner of the living room. He broke free from the arms of the officer supporting him and rushed to his daughter, enclosing her in a hug. Emily, my God, are you okay? Are you unhurt? Emily felt her body tense at his touch. Part of her felt a natural need to be comforted by her father, but another part of her, the other part wondered, what if he killed Alex? I'm fine, Dad. Her voice sounded strangely detached. Where have you been? James pulled away, looking at her in surprise. Out for a run. I run every morning, you know that. Mr. Grayson, Detective Rains interjected. "We need to ask you a few questions. When was the last time you saw your wife?" James turned to the detective, his face a frozen mask of grief. "Last night, before going to bed, about 11 o'clock, I kissed her and said goodnight." "And when did you leave the house this morning?" "At 6:30, as usual. Alex was still asleep." "Can anyone confirm your whereabouts?" James's eyes narrowed. "Am I a suspect?" "We're just gathering information at this point, Mr. Grayson," Detective Rains replied evenly. "So, has anyone seen you this morning?" James ran a hand over his face. "Probably the neighbors. I run the same route every day, through Sequoia Park, then along the Tennessee River and back through downtown." "Approximate time?" "I left the house at 6:30, got back around 8:15, but when I got here, there were already police cars here." James sank down on the couch, his shoulders slumped. "I can't believe she's gone." Detective Rains continued to ask questions about Alex's friends, about her daily routine, about possible enemies or conflicts. James answered mechanically, his gaze blank and his voice monotone. Emily watched her father in silence, trying to figure out if his grief was genuine or just good acting. By noon, the police had finished their work in the bedroom. Alex's body was placed in a black bag and carried out of the house. Emily stood at the window watching the paramedics load him into the ambulance. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she didn't make a sound. "Miss Grayson," Detective Rains approached her, "do you have a place you could stay for a few days? This house is a crime scene right now." Emily shook her head. "I have a cottage outside of town," James interjected. "We can stay there." "Okay," the detective nodded. "But before you leave, I need to take full statements from both of you." Emily and James spent the next 2 hours answering endless questions. Detective Rains was patient, but persistent. She wanted to know every detail of their lives, every aspect of their relationship with Alex. Emily tried to tell the truth, but kept quiet about the most important things, her true feelings for her stepmother and what had happened between them. By evening, when the police finally allowed them to leave the house, Emily felt devastated. Before they left, Detective Rains handed them her business card. "If you remember anything important, anything at all, call anytime." James nodded silently and led his daughter to the car. Emily turned around, casting one last glance at the house where just yesterday she had been happy. Now that house was the site of her nightmare. The next day, Detective Rains called James. The preliminary autopsy report was ready. Alex died of multiple blunt force trauma to the head. The murder weapon was most likely a metal light fixture found near the body. Time of death was between 5 o'clock and 7 a.m. But there was other news. The autopsy revealed that Alex was HIV positive. Judging by the state of her immune system, she was aware of her diagnosis and was taking antiretroviral therapy. James was shocked by this discovery. "That's impossible," he repeated, sitting in the kitchen of the cottage he and Emily had moved into. "She would have told me. She couldn't hide something like this." Emily was silent, staring into a cup of long-cooled tea. She didn't know about this side of Alex's life. They'd never discussed health, never talked about illness or medical issues. But this discovery made her wonder, what else didn't she know about the woman she thought she loved? "I have to take a test," James said, and there was fear in his voice. "And so do you. We don't know who else could." He didn't finish the sentence, but Emily understood. Who else could have been exposed? Who else could have been intimate with Alex? "Yes," she agreed quietly, feeling nausea coming up to her throat. "We both need to get tested." Detective Rains continued her investigation. She interviewed neighbors, friends, co-workers, anyone who might know something about Alex Grayson. Slowly, she pieced together the mosaic of her life, trying to find a clue to her death. One of the first people she questioned was Kyle Harris, Emily's ex-boyfriend. Neighbors said they'd seen him outside the Grayson house several times in recent weeks, often in a state of apparent agitation. Kyle did not deny his visits. "Yeah, I've been visiting," he admitted, sitting in the interrogation room. "Emily left me with no explanation. I wanted to know why." "And you found out?" Detective Rains asked. Kyle drummed his fingers nervously on the table. "No, She refused to talk to me, but I'm sure she had someone. She's changed, became sort of happy, like she had some kind of secret. Where were you the morning of the murder? At home, sleeping. I can provide security tapes from our apartment complex. They'll show that I didn't leave until 10 o'clock in the morning. Detective Rains nodded. She had yet to verify that alibi. Meanwhile, James and Emily's HIV tests came back negative. This was another blow to James. It meant Alex had indeed been hiding her diagnosis from him and was probably taking precautions. But why hadn't she told him? Was she afraid of his reaction? Didn't trust him? For Emily, the negative result was a relief, but also a bitter reminder that she and Alex had been careful in their intimacy. Now she wondered, had Alex known about her diagnosis when she'd started their relationship? Had she been honest about it at least? Alex's funeral had been a quiet, almost intimate affair. James had insisted on cremation, and now the urn with the ashes stood on the fireplace in their cottage. Emily looked at it often, trying to realize that the woman she loved was gone, that all that was left of her was a handful of ashes and memories that could never be revealed to anyone. Detective Rains never gave up on the investigation. She called regularly, asking new questions, updating on the progress of the case. They still hadn't found the killer, but the circle of suspects was narrowing. "We found something interesting," she said on another visit. Alex had a diary. We found it in a stash in her desk at work. Emily felt her heart skip a beat. A diary? What could it possibly say? "It has notes about her HIV status," Detective Rains continued. "She found out about the diagnosis 2 years ago, before she married your father." James turned pale. "That's impossible. She would have told me." Apparently, she chose not to. "There are entries in the diary about her fears that you might turn your back on her if you knew the truth." Emily remained silent, feeling a growing unease. What else could be in this diary? "There's something else." Detective Rains looked at Emily carefully. "The entries of the last few months suggest some sort of new relationship in her life, about feelings she considered forbidden, about a fear of being discovered." Emily felt the blood drain from her face. Had Alex really written about them? Had she really left such clear evidence of their connection? She had someone? James's voice shook with anger and pain. "She cheated on me?" Detective Rains kept her eyes on Emily. "We're trying to get to the bottom of this. There are no names in the records, just initials and hints. But if Alex did have an intimate relationship with someone, that could be key to the investigation." Emily realized the detective suspected something. Perhaps she had already read between the lines of the diary. Perhaps she already knew the truth. "I think we need a lawyer," James said suddenly, "before we answer any further questions." Detective Rains nodded understandingly. "That's your right. But remember, the sooner we find Alex's killer, the better for everyone." When the detective left, James turned to his daughter. "Do you know anything about this?" he asked, and Emily saw something frightening in his eyes. "Did you know Alex had someone?" Emily shook her head, unable to utter a word. She felt the world around her begin to crumble. Alex's diary could be her verdict. And if Detective Rains figured it out, if James found out. She remembered the morning of the murder, the sound of broken glass, muffled voices, arguments. What if James found the diary before the police did? What if he'd read it and learned everything about Alex's HIV status, about her relationship with his own daughter? What if that was the reason for his rage? Emily looked at her father with new eyes. She no longer saw him as an idle workaholic, but as a man capable of a terrible act. A man who could kill in a fit of rage. And for the first time since Alex's death, she was truly afraid for her life. The rain drummed on the roof of Grayson Cottage, creating a monotonous noise that made her sleepy. Emily stood at the window of her room, looking out at the blurry outline of the forest. Droplets dripped down the glass, distorting the landscape, making it unreal, like her whole life since Alex's death. It had been 3 weeks since that fateful morning when she discovered her stepmother's body. James had become more and more insistent in his desire to leave Knoxville, making small talk every night about a new life somewhere on the West Coast. The ringing of the phone snapped Emily out of her musings. Detective Rains' name popped up on the screen. "Emily? This is Detective Rains. I need to speak with you and your father. Can I come over in an hour?" "Is something wrong?" Emily felt her heart start to beat faster. I have some new information on the case. I'd prefer to discuss it in person. The detective's voice sounded formal, but Emily caught a note of tension in it. Of course. We'll be expecting you. Emily went downstairs where James was working at his laptop in the living room. Dad, Detective Rains called. She's coming in an hour. Says she has some new information on the case. James froze, his fingers pausing over the keyboard. Something resembling fear flashed in his eyes for a second, but he quickly mastered himself. Good. It's about time this investigation was wrapped up. The sooner the better. The hour of waiting dragged on for an agonizingly long time. James didn't return to his work, instead pacing the living room, occasionally glancing at his watch. Emily sat on the couch, leafing through a book but not taking in a word. Finally, the doorbell rang. Detective Rains entered the living room, accompanied by a young uniformed officer. Miss Grayson, Mr. Grayson, thank you for agreeing to meet. This is Officer Taylor. He will be attending to our conversation. Have a seat, Detective. James pointed to a chair. You said you had some new information? Detective Rains sat down in the chair, placing a leather folder in her lap. Her gaze was sharp and attentive. Yes, we've received the forensic results of the trace evidence found at the crime scene, and we've also uncovered some interesting details during additional interviews with witnesses. Mr. Grayson, in your statement, you claimed that on the morning of the murder you went out for a run at 6:30 and returned around 8:15 when the police had already arrived. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. James nodded, his face expressing nothing but mild curiosity. However, we have located a witness who saw you returning home much earlier. Mr. Peterson, who was walking his dog in the park near your house, claims to have seen you running in the direction of the house around 7 in the morning. James's face twitched for a moment, but he quickly managed himself. As Mr. Peterson is mistaken. He may have seen someone else. He identified you from a photograph and described your clothing, black sweatpants, gray jacket. That's consistent with what you usually wear for a jog, isn't it? That's pretty common athletic wear. A lot of runners dress like that. Detective Rains nodded in agreement, but her eyes remained serious. True, but there are other inconsistencies. The security camera at the gas station recorded you at 7:23. You were walking, wearing sportswear, but you weren't running, and you weren't heading home but in the opposite direction. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. Her father had lied about his whereabouts the morning of the murder. James frowned, his mask of calm beginning to crack. I might have changed the route. I don't remember exactly. Of course you do. But then the question becomes, why did you say you didn't get home until 8:15? I don't see where you're going with this, Detective. I may have gotten the details wrong. It was a traumatic morning for all of us. Detective Rains studied his face for a while, then continued. There's something else. We found the light fixture that was supposedly used as the murder weapon in a dumpster 3 blocks from your house. It had traces of your wife's DNA and fingerprints on it. Whose fingerprints? Emily asked, unable to contain herself. Your father's, Emily. There was silence in the room, broken only by the sound of rain outside the window and James's heavy breathing. This is absurd, he finally uttered. Of course my fingerprints could be on that lampstand. It was our lamp, from our bedroom. I could have touched it hundreds of times. Of course, but I wonder how it ended up in a dumpster 3 blocks from your house. Someone must have taken it there. James stood up, his hands clenched into fists. You're accusing me of killing my own wife? Detective Rains rose as well, her posture calm, but the officer at the door stepped forward, ready to intervene. I'm simply stating the facts, Mr. Grayson. Facts that don't agree with your version of events. Emily watched her father, seeing the emotions struggling on his face. Anger, fear, despair. I didn't do anything. I loved Alex. James's voice sounded hoarse, even after finding out about her HIV status and about her relationship with someone else. Detective Rains glanced at Emily, then looked at James again. I didn't know. We found signs of forced entry on the desk drawer where Alex kept her diary and medical records. Someone had tried to open it without a key. This happened a few days before the murder. Do you know anything about this, Mr. Grayson? James shook his head, but his eyes avoided the detective's gaze. No, nothing. Detective Rains pulled out a picture of a screwdriver with an unusual handle. Recognize it? The same screwdriver was found in your garage. Forensics determined that the drawer was broken into with this very tool. Emily shifted her gaze from the photograph to her father. His face contorted, as if he was trying to hold back the emotions tearing at him. It could be a coincidence, he said, but his voice sounded uncertain. There are too many coincidences, Mr. Grayson, and they all point to you. I think you should come with us to the station. We have more questions. James looked at Emily, a pleading look in his eyes. Emily, you don't really believe that, do you? You know I'm not capable. I couldn't. Emily looked away, unable to look him in the eye. All the pieces of the mosaic were adding up to a terrible picture. Her father had killed Alex. Mr. Grayson, please come with us. Detective Rains made a sign to Officer Taylor, who stepped closer. Something in James's eyes changed. Desperation was replaced with determination, and then something dark, frightening. I'm not going anywhere. You won't prove anything. Mr. Grayson, don't make this harder than it has to be. Come willingly, or we'll have to use force. James took a step back, his hand sliding into his pocket. Officer Taylor tensed, ready for action. Dad, please. Emily rose from the couch, reaching out to her father. Don't make it worse. Just go with them. James looked at his daughter, a flicker of pain in his eyes. Are you against me too, after everything I've done for you? I just want this to be over, for us to know the truth. James grinned bitterly, his face contorted with anger. The truth? You want to know the truth, Emily. The truth is that I've been living a lie for the past 4 years. My wife hid her illness from me. She betrayed my trust. And then... He hesitated, glaring at the detective. And then what, Mr. Grayson? Detective Rains asked quietly. James shook his head, his shoulders slumped. He took his hand out of his pocket. Empty. Never mind. I'll go with you. But know this. I'm innocent. Officer Taylor walked over to him, pulling out his handcuffs and reading him his standard driver's license. Emily looked at her father, at his slumped shoulders, at the hands that Officer Taylor was cuffing. James, always so strong, so confident, now looked small and pathetic. As he was led toward the exit, he turned around and looked at Emily. There was so much pain and disappointment in his gaze that she felt a prick of guilt. I'm sorry, Daddy, she whispered, but she doubted he heard. Detective Rains lingered after James was led out of the house. Emily, do you have a place to stay? Friends? Relatives? Emily shook her head. Since her mother's death many years ago, she had no relatives left except for her father. I can stay here? Look, your father is only being held for questioning for now. There's a chance he'll come back here. Given the circumstances, I'd recommend you find somewhere else. I don't have anyone. Detective Rains thought for a moment, then pulled a business card out of her pocket and held it out to Emily. Here's the address of a shelter for women in difficulty. It's a safe place. They'll help you there. Tell them I referred you. Emily took the business card. The thought of being alone in a house where her father might return was frightening. Thank you. Do you think he did it? Killed Alex? All the evidence points to him, but the final decision will be up to the court. In the meantime, take care of yourself, Emily, and if you remember anything important, call me anytime. When the detective left, Emily was left standing in the middle of the living room, feeling lost and alone. The rain outside the window intensified, drumming on the roof. A fire was finishing up in the fireplace, casting bizarre shadows on the walls. She sank slowly onto the couch, trying to comprehend what had happened. Her father had probably killed the woman she loved, and now he could be convicted of that crime. And her? What will happen to her? Where would she go? How would she live her life? Emily's gaze fell on the photograph on the mantelpiece, a smiling Alex, happy and full of life. Tears streamed down Emily's cheeks. The grief she'd been holding back all this time was finally breaking through. An hour later, she was already putting her things into a small bag, preparing to leave the house she no longer felt as her own. As she walked out, Emily looked back at him one last time. You can't change the past. You can only move forward. The courtroom was filled to capacity. A tense silence hung in the air, broken only by the whispering of reporters in the back rows and the rustling of papers being pored over by the lawyers. Bright sunlight streamed through the tall windows, creating intricate patterns on the wooden floor. Emily sat in the front row, her hands folded in her lap, fingers nervously intertwined. It had been 2 months since the day Detective Rains had taken James away for questioning. 2 months filled with depositions, attorney statements, court hearings, and now today was to be the final hearing where the jury would reach its verdict. The judge, an elderly man with gray hair and a stern face, took his seat. All present stood up and then sat down again at his sign. The side door opened and James entered, accompanied by 2 policemen. He had lost weight, his features sharpened, and there was more gray in his hair. He cast a quick glance at Emily, but she couldn't read the expression in his eyes. The proceedings began with formalities, but Emily hardly listened. Her thoughts were far away, with Alex, with their brief moments of happiness, with that horrible scene in the bedroom when she'd found her stepmother's body. Suddenly, Detective Rains's voice caught her attention. The detective had been called to give her final statement and now stood before the court, calm and collected, wearing a strict navy blue suit. "Detective Rains, can you tell the court how you came to the conclusion that James Grayson is the killer of his wife?" The prosecutor, a tall man with a thin mustache, asked. Detective Rains nodded and began to methodically lay out the course of the investigation. She talked about the inconsistencies in James's testimony, the murder weapon found with his fingerprints on it, the witnesses who had seen him returning home that morning earlier than he claimed. Her voice was even, professional, but had the restrained passion of someone dedicated to her case. But the most important evidence we got was when we discovered Alex Grayson's diary, Detective Rains continued. It contained entries about her relationship with her stepdaughter, Emily Grayson, as well as her HIV status, which she hid from her husband. A muffled mutter rippled through the courtroom. Emily lowered her eyes, feeling the blood rush to her cheeks. Everything was revealed. All the secrets were coming out. She could no longer hide her feelings for Alex, her role in this tragedy. According to the diary entries, Alex feared her husband was beginning to suspect something. She noticed signs of forced entry on her desk drawer, where she kept the diary and medical records. This happened 2 days before the murder. Detective Rains turned to James, who sat motionless, staring at one point in front of him. "We believe Mr. Grayson discovered his wife's diary and learned about her relationship with his daughter, as well as her HIV status. That was the final straw. And what do you believe happened on the morning of the day of the murder?" the prosecutor asked. Detective Rains paused, as if gathering her thoughts. "Based on all the evidence gathered, we reconstructed the events as follows. Mr. Grayson left the house early in the morning, allegedly to go for a jog. However, he instead watched the house for some time, perhaps gathering his wits or waiting for the right moment. Then he returned while his daughter was still asleep and found his wife alone in the bedroom." Emily involuntarily pictured the scene. Alex, perhaps still half asleep, surprised by her husband's early return, unaware that in a few minutes her life would be cut short. "We believe there was a confrontation between the couple. Mr. Grayson accused his wife of cheating and lying about her HIV status. A struggle ensued during which he grabbed a heavy metal light fixture and struck her several times in the head, resulting in her death." Detective Rains pointed to a screen that showed pictures of the crime scene, a broken mirror, an overturned chair, signs of a struggle. Mr. Grayson then attempted to cover up his involvement. He took the murder weapon, left the house, and threw it in a dumpster 3 blocks from the house. He then continued his run, deliberately getting in the line of sight of the security cameras to create an alibi. He only returned home after his daughter discovered the body and called the police. Emily looked at her father, trying to see him as a man capable of such cold-blooded planning. James still avoided her gaze, his shoulders slumped as if he was carrying an invisible weight. "Objection!" James's attorney, a full man in an expensive suit, suddenly exclaimed, "That's just an investigative theory unsupported by direct evidence. No one saw my client kill his wife." "Overruled," the judge replied. "Detective Rains presents a reconstruction of events based on the evidence gathered." The prosecutor nodded to the detective, inviting her to continue. The key to our investigation was the discovery that Mr. Grayson lied about his whereabouts on the morning of the murder. That along with his fingerprints on the murder weapon and his motive, jealousy and anger over his wife's relationship with his daughter, and fear of contracting HIV, creates a compelling picture of his guilt. As Detective Rains finished her testimony, there was silence in the courtroom. All eyes were on James, who still sat motionless like a statue. James's attorney tried to refute the evidence presented by the detective, but his arguments sounded unconvincing. Fingerprints, DNA, witness testimony, everything pointed to James's guilt. Finally, the judge gave the floor to the defendant himself. James rose slowly, his hands trembling slightly. He turned toward the court, and Emily was able to see his face clearly for the first time in the entire hearing. Haggard, aged 10 years, with deep wrinkles around his eyes and mouth. I mean to say that," he stammered, his voice hoarse. "Detective Rains is right. I killed my wife." A whisper rippled through the room. The judge called for order, banging his gavel. "I didn't plan it," James continued when the noise died down. "I swear I didn't mean to do it. But when I found her diary, when I read in there about her illness, about her keeping it from me all these years, about her being my daughter, too." He looked at Emily, and there was a mixture of pain, anger, and love in his eyes. I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. I decided to talk to her, to get her to confess, find out if she had infected my daughter. I left the house early in the morning, but not for a run. I walked the streets, trying to collect my thoughts. Then I came home and went straight to our bedroom. James spoke in a monotone, as if he were retelling someone else's story rather than his own actions. His eyes were dry, but his voice shook with restrained emotion. Alex woke up when I walked in. She knew right away that something was wrong. I asked her straight out, "Was what was written in the diary true? Is it true that she has HIV? Is it true that she and Emily—" He looked at his daughter again, and Emily felt tears streaming down her cheeks. She confessed, said she loved Emily, that they loved each other, that it happened on its own, that she didn't plan it, that she's on HIV medication, that she has an undetectable viral load, that she didn't and couldn't infect anyone. James clenched his fists, his face contorted in pain. But I didn't believe her. I couldn't believe her. All I could think about was that she could have infected my daughter, that she seduced her, that she lied to me all these years. I lost control, started screaming, shaking her. She fought back. We struggled. There was a lamp on the table, heavy metal. I grabbed it without thinking. James closed his eyes, as if trying to erase what happened next from his memory. I don't remember how many times I hit her. All I remember is that when I stopped, she wasn't moving anymore. Her eyes were open, but there was no life in them. That's when I realized what I'd done. There was dead silence in the courtroom. No one moved. Even the reporters stopped taking notes, stunned by the candor of the confession. I panicked, took the lamp and ran out of the house, threw it in the first trash can I could find. Then I just walked the streets, not knowing what to do. When I saw the police cars outside the house, I realized Emily had found the body and called the police. I went back, pretending I didn't know anything. James lowered his head, his shoulders shaking. I don't deserve forgiveness, especially from you, Emily. I took the man you loved away from you. I committed the worst sin a father can commit. But I want you to know that I really thought I was protecting you. I was wrong, but that's what was on my mind. I was afraid that she would infect you, that she would ruin your life. She didn't infect me, Emily said quietly, her voice sounding unexpectedly loud in the silence of the hall. Alex was always careful. She loved me and protected me. James nodded, tears finally streaming down his cheeks. I know that now, and it makes what I did seem even more heinous. The judge signaled to the guards, and James was led back to the bench. The hearing continued, but Emily barely listened. She thought about her father's words, about his confession, about how one moment of anger and fear had destroyed the lives of 3 people. The jury retired to reach a verdict, but the outcome was a foregone conclusion. They returned 2 hours later with a unanimous verdict, guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced James Grayson to life in prison without parole for 25 years. As the guards led him away from the courtroom, James turned to his daughter one last time. In his eyes was a plea for the forgiveness he knew he didn't deserve. Emily stared at him, unable to forgive or hate him. He was her father, the man who had raised her, loved her, and he was also the killer of the woman she loved most in the world. After the session, Detective Rains approached Emily. "How are you?" she asked with genuine concern. Emily shrugged, feeling strangely devastated. "I don't know. I thought that when the truth came out, I'd feel better, but it didn't." Detective Rains nodded understandingly. "It will get easier with time, but the scars will stay forever. It's important to find a way to live with them without letting them define your life." "I'm trying," Emily replied quietly. They walked out of the courthouse together. It was warm outside, the sun was shining, and people were hurrying about their business, unaware of the drama that had just played out in the courtroom. Life went on, no matter what. "What are you going to do now?" Detective Rains asked as they pulled up in front of her car. Emily looked up at the sky, at the floating clouds, at the passing birds. "I'm going to start over. I'll go to college in another city, study art like Alex dreamed of. I'm going to live a life that will make her proud of me." Detective Rains smiled, a soft expression in her eyes. "That's a good plan, and know that you can always call me if you need help, or just to talk." Emily thanked her and said goodbye. She walked down the street feeling oddly relieved. The truth had been revealed. Justice had been served. Now, a new phase of her life was beginning, a life without Alex, without her father, but with the memory of both of them.